Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in for another episode of Wildness and Wellbeing. Just a quick heads up, in this episode we'll be talking about suicide. Hello and welcome to another episode of Wildness and Wellbeing. I'm Tim Jones, also known as Adventure Yeti, and today I'm with Ben Grove, who is an outdoor instructor and the head honcho at Psychi, who are an independent company based on the edge of the Peak District, making bouldering accessible for everyone. So yeah, hey Ben, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks mate. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to having a chat.
Awesome stuff. So I read on your Psychi profile, you're usually found climbing on a road bike or fell running. Where did your passion for the outdoors start?
I don't specifically remember a moment that it started. It's always been part of my life. I grew up in Cornwall actually, down on the south coast, right down near Land's End. And from sort of my earliest memories, I was being dragged to the beach after school, and I think my swimming lessons were being chucked in the sea and told to swim. And our family holidays were either to a cottage in Scotland, or we sometimes went to France, sort of Euro camping. So I've always been outdoors. Both my parents are fairly outdoorsy. We've always had dogs. They go on dog walks and things like that. So yeah, especially the mountains were a big part of sort of my childhood holidays and things like that. And how much you rebel when you're a teenager, you're like, oh, I don't want to go out for walks. It roots itself in you somewhere. And I think as I got older, it's just always been part of my life, really.
Nice.
Yeah.
What would you say has been a big highlight for you when it comes to the outdoors?
Highlight. I think being in the mountains of North Wales, Scotland, and the Lake District are the thing I'm always drawn back to. I do some mountain biking, I do some road cycling, running, lots of things, lots of climbing. But if I always have the opportunity to disappear hill walking and go wild camping in the mountains, it's the draw of being in the middle of nowhere and the solitude and the wildness of places that is sort of that highlight for me. That's the thing I'm always drawn to. Yeah.
I guess what was the key driver to creating Psychi?
Yeah, so when I was 17, I had sort of just left college, didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and I got a job at a local climbing centre. I climbed there when I was a kid, just at their local kids club. I think my mum actually suggested to me, she went, oh, why don't you go and see if the climbing centre have got a job going just behind reception or something. I was like, oh yeah, I could do that. So I went and started working at the climbing centre and did some instructing there, did some route setting, and slowly sort of worked my way up there. And I think I worked there till I was about 21, 22. And but I was never full-time, I was only part-time there, and I really wanted full-time work. And they just couldn't offer it me at the time, so I ended up leaving and going working for a friend's company, completely different. It was they worked with sort of electronics. It was online retail, selling electronic stuff, and I learned how to do that. And then my brain went, well, you know how to sell now and do online retail, and you have a passion for climbing. Can we merge these two things?
Nice.
So and at the time, I was really getting into climbing, trad climbing and bouldering outside. And all the gear was so expensive, especially bouldering pads. I remember looking at them and they were like £250, £300 for a pad. I was like, it's a square piece of foam. Like, how much can it really be? So yeah, I set Psychi up, and I started bringing in some products. We started with basic things like chalk balls and chalk bags, and came up with a brand name. And I was doing it on the side. I still had my other job at the time, and yeah, we slowly, I say we, it was me on my own at the time. I was still working out my sort of parents' conservatory. I had boxes and things. I was doing a few hours in the morning before I went to my actual job, and then I came home, packed the orders, and did that. And I remember I did that for probably about 6 months to a year. I was running both at the same time, and I was so tired because I was getting up in the morning, doing a couple of hours, and then afterwards, and I suddenly realised I was like, I could actually leave my job and get paid a similar amount of money for doing this on my own. And so I left and started doing it full time, and then you could put all the time into it, and it grew. And suddenly you're self-employed and you're running a business. And that was never a goal of mine when I was younger. I never wanted to be a businessman or an entrepreneur. It just sort of fell into happening, really. And yeah, I couldn't think of doing anything else now. It's so part of me and who I am that I love it.
Was it a bit daunting when you kind of realised, I'm now a entrepreneur?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's daunting. It was more exciting. I remember the first few weeks where I wasn't going to a normal job, and I got up and I put all my time and effort into doing the thing I loved doing, and sort of the world was my oyster. I was like, what new product can I bring out? What thing can I design? Or refreshing eBay and Amazon where we sold, and there was people buying these products, and suddenly I was like, oh my god, I can actually pay myself some money. This is like, how is this even a real thing? And yeah, that was sort of how it started, and it's just grown from there. And we went from being just sort of me and working at my parents' conservatory to sort of where we are now. We're a pretty well established UK brand and known all throughout Europe, and yeah.
Yeah, I think reading about it and reading kind of your ethos as a company, I noticed you're like, one, you're really affordable and want to make it accessible to everyone and anyone. And I think your events really show that, but also the environmental factor as well.
Yeah.
You guys seem to be really, really conscious of the environment, which is really great.
Yeah, we it's sort of changed over the years, really. Well, when we first set up, like, all our products came in sort of single-use plastic bags, and I suppose it's you streamline the way you work. You get to a point and you look at your products and you look at your processes and you go, how can we be more eco-friendly? Because why wouldn't you be if
yeah, totally.
you have that option? And I remember years ago we took all the single-use plastic out of our system. So we changed all our packaging to card packaging, completely biodegradable, recyclable card packaging. And it was just something we did. And I've always had this this dilemma about shouting about it too much. Because you see on social media, people are always like, oh, look how eco-friendly we are. But sometimes I'm like, just change it and crack on. You don't need to tell everyone how ethical you are or how eco-friendly you are, and it's always a weird balance.
Yeah, I think also there's the aspect of greenwashing as well, especially with the larger corporations.
Yeah.
And that's what throws even more complications into the mix a little bit.
Yeah. There's a I won't say the brand name, but there's quite a big outdoor brand that we all would have heard of, and I remember probably about a year ago now, they posted something on social media saying that all their packaging bags that they sent products out in were now made from 50% recycled material. And everyone was in the comments, oh, that's amazing, all this. And I was sat there thinking, you're an enormous corporation, only 50% of your packaging is recyclable. We changed to fully card years ago. It's not difficult to do. It eats into your margin a little bit, and it takes up slightly more room on a container when you're shipping it. But I was like, this huge corporations doing less than they should be, and we're quite a small company in sort of comparison, and yeah, we try and do as much as we can. I offset all the carbon for all our athletes as well, and all our staff. So when our athletes fly around the world, we try and offset the carbon for all their flights and things like that.
That's good. That's really good.
Yeah, I mean, we try and shout about it a little bit on social media just to let people know that we do these things. But yeah, I think there's a fine line between sort of patting your back too much and just getting on with it. Yeah.
I guess when it comes to kind of the accessibility factor, you've started running events.
Mm-hmm.
Do Do you think it's easy enough for people to get outdoors at the moment, or do you think more needs to be done?
Yeah, I think more needs to be done, and I come from quite an old school climbing background, really. When I started climbing when I was 17, there wasn't all these indoor bouldering centres that there are now, and there was an apprenticeship scheme, really. When you wanted to climb outside, you found someone at the local climbing centre that was older than you, usually knew what they were doing, and they would take you under the wing, and you went out and you learned how to climb outside, whether that was bouldering, whether that was trad climbing, putting your gear in and things like that. And that was how a lot of people learn. Where because there's so many people in the climbing world now that want to go out bouldering, there's not enough people to offer that almost friendship, apprenticeship style teaching. And because in the UK we have a really strong ethics around climbing outside, and even with our sort of countryside code and conservation and things like that, that there's a lot that people don't know about being out in the countryside. And I think it's really difficult for people to know. And they go out and they put chalk on footholds, and they'll potentially leave litter around, or they're doing things to the rock and in the bouldering areas that they potentially shouldn't be doing. And it's not because they're doing it on purpose. They just don't know that these sort of bouldering and climbing ethics are a thing. And that was one of my sort of reasons around trying to start these outdoor bouldering sessions. And because we are quite our products are often, especially the bouldering pads, are at the lower end of the price point. A lot of beginners go to buying our pads, and then they go out, and I've been at crags before and I've seen people doing like not brushing tick marks or doing these things, and sometimes I've got Psychi pads with them, and I feel a level of responsibility that sometimes the people that are potentially doing some of the damage at the crags are using my products, and I want to go over to them and help them and tell them. And I was like, you know what, well, I can do something here. So I was like, I'm going to start running free outdoor bouldering sessions. People that have never done it, come along. I'll teach them all the ethics and things. It's free of charge. Come along, have a day out bouldering, and we'll give you some info. So yeah, I think it would be good if more brands and more people would do that. But I understand often there's people want to make money. They're a business, so they start charging for things like that, and sometimes people haven't got the money to do it, which is why I've tried to offer them for free and just give up my weekend and sort of go out and help.
Yeah, I think especially from the ethics side, that was a big thing that I noticed when I went on the bouldering session with you guys, talking about I think you pointed out some climbers that were in a nesting area, and you were saying where to find out where you can climb,
like the BMC RAD, the Regional Access Database, which tells you all about the nesting restrictions. And if there's anyone listening to this that does climb outside, if you have a look at the BMC RAD, it's a really good database. You can see if there's birds nesting in that area, if you shouldn't climb there, if you should climb there. And UKC is also a really good resource for that. There's lots of info on there about things.
I think as well, like just simple things like wiping your shoes before you hit the rock as well, so you don't wear it down. I think that's a really important thing.
The thing is, if you're a climber and you climb inside, when have you ever brushed your shoes indoors before you've got on the wall? You never have.
Yeah.
So why would you go outside and start doing that? You just wouldn't know, would you?
No, totally.
You wouldn't know that grit on your shoes wears down the rock and makes it smooth. And who's there to tell you? We're not going to put big signposts up at the crag with like a little top 10 list of ethics. It's just not going to happen. And the thing with the old school generation, I find, is they get really annoyed at these people rather than trying to educate them, and that you end up with this conflict. And the best way to do it is just teach them. Just go away. If you see someone doing something you don't, instead of going and being confrontational, just go over. They might not know. Speak to them about it and just try and educate people. Yeah,
so I guess when it comes to yourself and climbing, what kind of climbing do you do?
Very much a jack of all trades. I started just at an indoor climbing centre doing the indoor stuff, and then I slowly moved outside, did some trad climbing and sport climbing, and then I started doing a bit of winter walking, which developed into a bit of winter climbing, which then sort of moved on to me doing some alpine climbing. So yeah, I've sort of climbed all over the world, all forms of climbing that you can imagine. But yeah, climbed in the Alps a bit, which is fun. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. So I guess part of this podcast is like the theme is mental health. I mean, how's the outdoors helped you when it comes to your mental health?
Yeah, it's been massive for me over the years, especially with running the business. I've had some pretty dark times, a lot of stress coupled with anxiety and things like that, and I would say exercise especially. Which often revolves around being in the outdoors has been a big one for me. It's I don't like using the word escape because I think that's can almost be like you running away from your problems, but I think it puts a lot of things in perspective. If I am really stressed about work or life or relationships or whatever it is, and I go and have a day in the hills, I come back, and although I know my problems are still going to be there, I've got a lot more clarity on how to deal with them, how to approach them. I think the outdoors is a very humbling place, especially the mountains. So I think it's really good for clearing the brain and allowing you a better mindset to go back to whatever it is you need to deal with.
Totally.
Yeah, because I don't think you can running away from your problems and burying your head in the sand just doesn't work when it comes to mental health. You can be stressed and you can try running away from it and it's still going to be there. But being able to have a good approach on how to deal with that is really good, and having some time away in the hills is really good sort of clarity. I think it's puts a lot of things in perspective. So yeah, I mean, as well as my own struggles, I know a lot of people that have also struggled. I had a friend who I saw him like a little brother really. He lad called Liam. He climbed at the climbing centre when I used to work there. Actually, he was he was one of the kids that used to climb. He was probably about 4 or 5 years younger than me. And I sort of took him under my wing a little bit. I took him climbing, and we climbed in Scotland together, and he came to the Dolomites on numerous trips with our sort of climbing group. Really good lad. And I knew he had some struggles, and sadly he committed suicide when he was 21. And that was the first time I'd really dealt with someone else being in a dark place and going all the way, really. And that was really tough because he did it 4 days before we were meant to be going to the Dolomites on a trip together, and we all knew how much he loved climbing, how much he loved the outdoors, how much that was his therapy. As with many of us, it's our therapy. And there was always a tough thing of, if only we'd got him another 4 days and got him away, maybe things would have been different. But yeah, that was really hard, dealing with that. And I've always wondered if often that was the start of me having some mental health issues myself. I've never really pinpointed that. I think it was a combination of things, but yeah, that was a really tough one to take. He was only 21. He had lived a lot of life. He'd done a lot of things, but to lose someone that young was a real struggle. And the first, I think, year after that, I found it very hard. There was so many the whys and all the questions that go with losing someone. Yeah, that was a tough one.
Yeah, I can imagine that was really tough, and I think it just highlights. I think, I mean, just everyone, but I think especially guys, we just don't seem to always open up so much and talk about
Yeah.
our mental health. I don't think it's necessarily a kind of a macho thing. It's just more of a, for some reason we're not as open sometimes. I think what I like a little bit about the outdoors is that I feel like it opens people up. I mean, I've been on a lot of hikes with other guys and they've told me all sorts that have been going on in their heads, like whether it's suicidal thoughts or whatnot. And I think the outdoors does open it up, but I think we still need to really push to talk more with each other.
That's a really interesting point, actually. I'd never thought about conversation like that in terms of the outdoors, because now I think about it, I've probably had some of the most deep conversations or conversations with friends, especially lads that have been struggling whilst being outdoors on walks and things, because you don't often have that when you're in a pub environment or when you're down the climbing wall.
Yeah.
There is something about being outside. If you go for a long walk in the countryside, it seems to relax everyone a little bit, and they maybe have the ability to open up a bit more.
Yeah, I think it's also a distancing thing, isn't it? You feel a lot further away from what's going on in some respects.
Yeah.
You know, like no one else can kind of hear almost.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the outdoors does. It's really good for that.
Yeah. It's weird. There is, obviously we talk about mental health, and especially with guys, we talk about it being, I mean, it's way better now. More people talk and more people open up than ever have done before. But there is still this, I think, internal stigma rather than societal stigma that it's blokes still don't want to talk about their feelings.
Yeah.
And I think society's ready to hear the problems and listen. But I think there's still something deep in men that finds it really difficult to open up.
Yeah. But I think it's all about kind of almost getting comfortable about talking with anyone about your mental health, and it becoming not a stigma, but just a normal thing, I guess, checking in.
Yeah.
But
checking in's a big one. I think ever since I lost Liam, I've made a real effort to check in with my guy friends a lot more, and just send that message and be like, how are you doing? But I always try and do a don't bullshit me.
Yeah.
Like, how are you actually doing?
Yeah.
Don't just send the I'm good cheers. Like, tell me. If you need to ring me up and have a rant, do it. But like a no bullshit, how are you doing type thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Check, then check again.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah. So what key tool would you say has helped you with your mental health so far?
Yeah, good question. Lots of things, whether that be exercise or cold showers, or you know all these things that people say help you. And I can't remember who it was, but someone once said that your mental health is like building a mountain a layer of paint at a time, and it's stuck with me. And I'm just really regimented with doing lots of small things every day. So I take a cold shower every single morning. I make sure I exercise every day, whether that's just going for a walk, lifting some weights, going for a run, climbing. I make sure I take lots of vitamins and minerals. I eat healthy. I try to have less screen time. So just lots of things. All the things that you hear people say, this is good for your mental health. I try and do all of them every day in small amounts. And that's the one thing that I found is best to having a clear head. And I think it's really good for people as well that are maybe starting on a journey of trying to sort their mental health out, because they can pick one or two little things and just go, you know what, this week I'm going to do 3 cold showers and I'm going to make sure I eat healthy. And they can spend a week or 2 weeks just doing them things, and then you can add on top of that and just keep doing it. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all rule, and I don't think there's one thing that you can do that'll really help you. I think the key is doing lots of small things, lots of good habits every single day, and build them into your routine until suddenly your life and your routine is actually a series of positive things rather than sort of the negative traits.
Nice. Awesome. Well, cheers for coming on, Ben.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of Wildness and Wellbeing. Please feel free to like, share, subscribe or leave a review. Also, if you're struggling at all, we've got some handy web links at the bottom of our website, so feel free to head over to www.wildnessandwellbeing.com. Thank you.